Hi, Iman. Thank you so much for coming on Black Ink Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Before we get into it, I know you're a journalist at The Guardian, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Well, I'm Algerian British and I grew up in the UK and have spent lots of time travelling around, very lucky with work. And I do a series on modern masculinity for The Guardian, which is on YouTube. And
I really enjoyed that.
Thanks. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. It's an opportunity, I guess, to kind of get out and be curious and explore and go speak to people I don't usually speak to, which is what I think I'm probably all about. It's just like getting out, meeting new people, and trying to learn something new. So that's why I'm a journalist.
Yeah, I hear that. I've got two brothers and a lot of male cousins, so I often force them into like very awkward situations, like ask them questions and really challenge them, because otherwise I'm like, I don't want you to go into the world. And people are like, you have sisters, why did they not check you?
Oh yeah, honestly, do you know what? I think I find it a bit of a red flag when a guy doesn't have a sister.
Yeah. I'm like, he hasn't been prepped.
Yeah, no, the guys and sisters are just like, they have already had all that like groundwork and training done. So
yes, exactly. And also you're my first female guest, which is like a celebration inside. I was like, yay!
Good, I'm glad.
So where can people catch you on your socials?
It's Iman Amrani on both Twitter and Instagram. And if you just type Iman Amrani into YouTube, there's loads of videos. I think Masculinity Series is one I always kind of like point people to at the moment, for sure.
I got a bit lost in that as well. I typed you in, I started watching one video. It was like a few hours later and I was like immersed.
It's messy. And do you know what? There's some videos I watch back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Do you know what? I have this awful habit of when I speak to people, I always code switch and like really speak like the person I'm talking to. And yeah, so I watch back the interviews and I just find it's so embarrassing, because the worst one was when I met this guy who is a UFC fighter and he is Cuban American. I listened back and I was speaking to him in an American accent. He's really famous and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to say his name, but like so, in the edit I was like to my editor, I was like, you have to take out my Mexican accent because this is disgusting. So
I'm going to be looking for that now. I'm going to be searching for that online just to...
Right, it's not there.
Oh damn it. My sister is quite similar. She all of a sudden, if she's with a Liverpudlian, she has that accent. It's like, I'm like, Soph, what are you doing? So that's why I find it quite hilarious.
Yeah. And the worst is, I think, American accents. The American accent's really bad. It just sounds like, my mate's like, what are you doing? Like who is this?
Who are you right now? And it's so easy to pick up as well. And it kind of sounds like we're taking the mick, especially when we start doing the American accents.
No, it's true. But yeah.
So thank you for coming on Black Ink Cinema podcast. It's all about celebrating all things Black cinema, and we asked you to pick a film and you chose Dead President, directed by the Hugh brothers, who they also did Menace to Society, which is a classic. Why did you pick this film?
Well, as you say, the Hughes brothers, they did Menace to Society, which is like an iconic Black film, and I love that film. Like it's kind of a bit like Boys in the Hood when you're looking at like the issues it deals with. But I feel that Dead Presidents as a follow-up is really interesting, because Menace to Society deals with a lot of issues to do with the ghetto in LA, and it's got like this kind of famous story about how Tupac was supposed to be in it, but he didn't want to play like a Muslim gangbanger, and then there was like a fight and all this stuff. And those stories, you know, they exist and they're very kind of prominent and they're at the fore when we're talking about, you know, films of the 90s. But Dead Presidents took it a step further, and instead of dealing with like issues to do with gangs and to do with crime just in and of itself in like an urban context, it was dealing with Black veterans who had been serving in Vietnam. And I thought that was such a fascinating place to go and look at a story, because it was different, you know. It wasn't like people always complain about, you know, the way that the African Americans in particular are seen in film, and that's why I wouldn't have wanted to choose necessarily one of the gangbanging films, even though they're excellent, they're really good, and they're a valuable part of the culture. Dead Presidents was like a step beyond. Do you know what I mean? So
I thought it was a brilliant choice. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant choice, and it's so underrated.
Yeah, massively. A lot of people haven't seen it. Like, a lot of people haven't seen it, but I remember when I was at university, even before I'd been at university, like I'd spent a year living in a Haitian village in the Dominican Republic. Yeah,
that's amazing.
It was really, really interesting being there and like looking at how like Haitians, basically Haiti and Dominican Republic is the same island.
Yes.
But like the Haitians, they come over to the Dominican Republic to work on like the sugarcane fields and things like that. And basically they come as like manual labor. It's almost like a form of like modern day slavery, what goes on there. And race there is super interesting. And I was like interested in that, obviously, because of my background, like being Algerian, I'm super interested in all of those issues.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend at uni was French Cameroonian.
Okay.
So we had that Franco, like French background, both of us did. Yeah. And so we'd be like, just like rinsing through all of these like films which dealt with race and stuff. So at uni, I was just like such a nerd on like Spike Lee and
oh yeah. Like you're preaching to the choir, babe. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm not with you. That's one thing I found really interesting is that they touched upon the Vietnam War and how the Black community was affected. And I think the only other show that I know recently anyway that touches upon that, I don't know if you've watched it, is Watchmen series.
I haven't watched it, no, but I've heard about it, yeah.
Oh, babe, it's amazing. It blew my mind. I was not expecting it. It's nothing like the film, so don't go in there thinking that that's what it's like. But I
haven't seen you mean the film, like Their Presidents? Is it a film? Is Watchmen a film as well?
Yeah, Watchmen. Yeah, there was a film like years ago.
okay, because I'm like, I've heard about this, but it's one of those things I haven't watched.
Oh my God, no. And so they've done a series, HBO with Regina King, and they're bringing race and they talk about the Vietnam War and they have a similar scene of like Negroes go home and this and kind of feeling very displaced, that you're here fighting for a country that doesn't fight for you kind of thing. So it's quite interesting to watch that in there as well.
There are quite a few things in there that I feel like have been touched on. You know, like say for example, like Muhammad Ali said that he wouldn't go and fight in Vietnam. Like that is a story that we were kind of familiar with, and I think especially like in the UK, being further away from that history that America has with Vietnam, and the way that we look at it, it was like, oh, Muhammad Ali said he wouldn't go, but what this film did was it actually shows you what that experience was about for the people that did go.
Exactly.
And I just thought that was really interesting side to things. Like most people weren't Muhammad Ali. Most people couldn't just be like, you know, I'm not going to go and you know, do what I'm asked to do. And that's why I think this film's a really, really important film.
Yeah, because it starts off and it shows Larenz Tate, this young kid, innocent, and he wants to find his place in the world. And it shows his journey from that into war and how you literally see his innocence being kind of like stripped away. In particular, that scene when he has to help his friend die and who's had his guts blown out.
And you do spoilers on here then? You like straight up and spoilers,
yeah? If they haven't by now, they should, you know? I love that you look at it and you're like, don't tell them.
I hate spoilers. But if I know that that's the rule, it's okay. But I was
yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's totally fine. We'll warn them at the beginning and be like, you know, if you haven't watched this, go watch it first and then.
Okay, cool.
You know. But, yeah, did you feel like you could connect with Larenz Tate's character at all?
I mean, there were lots of things that I felt connected to, something that I felt a part of in a weird way. Like growing up, like I was always aware that, you know, Algeria fought for independence and they got independence in 1962 from the French, right? And like people like, you know, my great grandparents would have fought for France, right? In the French army, you know, and they wouldn't, lots of those people came back and were not looked after. You know, there's lots of Algerians who basically they fought like they were French and they fought, you know, under the impression that they were going to get liberation, and then that didn't come, and then nothing came. And so there's like a collective kind of struggle from like the former colonies, right, where people have been used in a certain way by, you know, armies and powers which are in control, and they promise things that they've not like followed up on. And I feel like that's what happens in Dead Presidents. It's like these are black men who fought like for America America.
Yeah.
And then they basically are just screwed by the system. Exactly. So I felt like, you know, there was stuff like that. And then obviously there's like a reference to like the Black Panthers, and, you know, way back when in the 60s, there was like Black Panthers who were exiled from America, and they went and lived in Algiers. So like Algeria's kind of got a connection.
Oh my God, I did not know that. I heard a lot like Cuba and you know, the Caribbean, but I did not know about the Algerian connection there. That's pretty cool.
Algeria has like a really strong connection with places like Cuba because of that whole like fighting for liberation. And you know, when I watched this film, I have to say, I was in uni when I was like full of like the idealistic, like reminiscent for me of those idealistic times as a student where you're like, yeah, like fight the power, and you know, watching these films being like, yeah, you should like stand up for what you believe in. Obviously, I'm that, but obviously I'm a little bit more cynical these days. But
you and I both. It's like fight. We try,
exactly. But you know, watching films like this kind of I enjoyed watching it this week. It reminded me of that feeling of being like, oh yeah, like, you know, you should stand up for what you believe in, and kind of have an idea of what it is you want to do in life, which is what a lot of these films in that golden era, as Larenz Tate kind of calls that era of like black cinema in America. Yeah. That golden era had a lot of things about taking control of your future and realizing that the system isn't set up for you. And it's very specific to an African American experience, but I think a lot of people from different backgrounds and communities can watch that and be like, oh yeah, like, you know, if you're not careful, you will fall into something that you don't have any control on, and it might not end very well.
Yeah, I mean, the cast was ridiculous. You had Larenz Tate, Chris Tucker, Terrence Howard. I'd almost forgotten that Chris Tucker was in that film. And then considering it was just after or around Friday, I think he gives a really good performance.
Yeah, like he's a baby in that film. He's so young. He's a baby. He's so young, but he... I do think that in that film, he really brings a lightness the film needs, because without him...
Oh my God, it was quite dark.
It is dark. And he does that thing that I love with comedy where he like brings a lightness but a truth. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I found him to be a fantastic addition to the whole thing that was going on. Because Larenz Tate, he was just probably... He's good looking, but he's not very funny. His character's not funny. He's not really got any going on. So.
Yeah, he was so young, so handsome.
He still is. Have you seen him recently?
Oh my God, yeah. I know. When he did the cameo in Girls Trip, like literally everyone in the audience was like, woo! It took us back for a minute. It took us back.
And he hasn't aged. He's a bit of a Pharrell.
Yeah, oh God, I know. I don't know if they're drinking vampire blood or something, but they need to share it, because honestly, it's just, that was so nearly 30 years ago, and he hasn't changed that much.
It's mad.
Absolutely crazy. But his performance in that is so good, so underrated. You kind of expected him to propel into like mega stardom. And I feel like I don't know if it was a conscious decision for him to kind of like take a step back a little bit.
I don't know. I feel like he did do quite a lot. I mean, I just feel like I've seen him in quite a lot of things, and he played the romantic guy as well. What was it? Was it in Love Jones?
Love Jones,
Yeah, so he's like, I remember watching him do an interview, and actually I think with Larenz Tate, what I respect him for was that he managed to play such diverse characters. And he said in an interview that after Menace to Society, he was like, great, this is great. And it was a hugely successful film. Yeah. But he was like, I'm not just playing a gangbanger. I'm not going to just play like a gangster and a bad guy. I can be a good guy. I can be the romantic guy. I can, do you know what I mean? I can be a Vietnam War vet.
Yeah, you know? I think he did that quite well. And in this, it kind of feels like there's three films. You've got the coming of age, you've got the Vietnam War, and then you've got the heist. Yes. Did you think that worked, or did you think it was a bit too much to squeeze into one film?
I quite liked it. I like those films of the 90s. You know, there's something about those films where they're like proper chapterized, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen. And I like that. I thought it was cool. But it reminds me of so many different films around that time. Do you know what I mean? It's like Love and Basketball has a similar thing of like, you know, it's like different sections of life. Even then, do you know what I mean? It's like somebody's life journey and like the steps you take and where that leads you. So.
And usually I'll think it's a little bit too long, but it was needed to show the different stages of his life and how his character develops throughout the film, and how he got from point A to B. So I think they did a good job, personally.
Yeah, me too.
So do you think when it first came out, it didn't do too well? do you think that played against them, like the fact they try to do too much, or because obviously now it's aged as a nice cult classic, but at the time it didn't do as well as like Menace to Society or...
I think that films like Menace to Society, they give people what they want in a really kind of raw way. It appeals to like a bigger culture. Like, do you know what? The soundtrack is excellent on Dead Presidents, but in Menace to Society, there's something about it that really, really does link to like a wider hip hop culture, like to a wider culture in terms of like even like early Black Hollywood.
Yeah.
Thinking about like LA and the Tupac era and whatever, you know, even though he ended up not being in that film, that story, do you know what I mean? That generated so much kind of energy as well. Tupac's like, I was the one that introduced those directors, the people that gave them that. Do you know what I mean? And it's there was so much buzz around all of that. And I feel like Dead Presidents is like more grown up. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I thought it was more grown up, more serious. And I think people weren't sure where they fit in it.
Yeah, but then I think it's a really interesting thing to actually look at that and be like, why does that not do as well? Because when you talk about like diversity in cinema, right, and you're talking about, why is everything... First of all, I love Top Boy, but a few people were like, is it again, this is how Black stories are being told? Yeah. And it's like, you know what, those stories do really well, both in and out of the community. So you have to ask the question. So when these other films don't do as well, it is really important to say, like, what is it about this that hasn't connected with people, and why is it always these other ones that, you know, doesn't?
I think I have I have my own little theory, and I kind of feel like Menace to Society appeals to the audience outside the Black community as well, because it's like Black on Black violence, and so that's kind of like, oh yeah, we're used to seeing that, or that's fine. But when it comes to like a human story of Black men going to fight in a war, which is not often told. I can't tell you how many World War II movies I've watched, but like it's kind of like people are like, oh, that's a bit too serious, and so people don't make that connection. So that's my kind of theory when it comes to why hood films work, and there's so many of them, and we'll churn them out. But when they're like a proper drama like this kind of comes around, people are a bit thrown, and they're like, oh, well, okay, I'm not quite sure where to put that film.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I feel like, as well, like I say, I watched this at a certain time in life where I was like, yeah, I'm really about this, like, learning about the history. I was never like an activist student or anything like that. I was not, that was so not my bag. I was like, I just, you know, wanted to go out, have a good time, but also like understand like where the music came from. I was really into music. I like wrote about music for my dissertation and stuff. Like, and so I wrote about like Afro-Colombian identity and hip hop, and that was what I was into. And I was always kind of interested in understanding like the overlaps and how things worked. I liked knowing that there were like collective lines between the struggles that like different groups of people had, because I feel like we get so, do you know what? I feel like we get so divided, and actually those collective struggles can actually unite people. And I just felt that, you know, that film really did do something for me then, where I was like, oh, okay, you know, and that's when like the seeds were kind of sown around that age, and even before, for like, you know, doing the masculinity series that I do. So, you know, in the film, there's this thing of Larenz Tate's character. He wants to be the man, and he wants to provide. And he's gone off to war, to try and make him a man. He said to his dad, like, isn't that what you said about when you were in the army? Like, I want to do what you did. And so you can see he doesn't really know how to become the man he thinks he's supposed to be. You see his relationship with this girl that he doesn't really know. And, you know, and when he goes away, he comes back and they've got a kid together. It's like, he doesn't know how to communicate with her. And there's another guy that's been on the scene, and this guy's been, you know, sorting her out with money and sorting her out whatever else, you know.
I mean, is that his kid? But that's for another day.
I mean, 100%. But it was kind of mad, because it was just like, watching that, I was like, I feel bad for him, because he's obviously not equipped with the tools to navigate this world that he's in. And, you know, the issues to do with like, they never name it, but HIV is PTSD also never actually named, but you can clearly see that, there are so many different things that come up, which I'm interested in just generally now, like mental health and like how we don't talk about that with men, and all of these other kind of taboos come up in the film and they're never really like totally cracked open. Yeah. But they're picked up on, and that's something that I really, really, I think probably has influenced like my work now and the way that I approach stuff as a journalist.
100%. And I think just watching that, you like with your series of masculinity, it hits the nail on the head. It's like no one really talks about what they're really going through. Everyone's suffering in silence. Chris Tucker's character's taking drugs. There's so much goriness. I mean, the gory scenes in Vietnam were just like, I don't know how anyone can come back to normality after witnessing that. But when Bakeem Cleon cuts the guy's head off and keeps that in his bag, it's like, and then comes back and he becomes a pastor. It's like, how did that crazy person become a pastor and is like leading a whole congregation? But I think there's so many talking points in Dead Presidents, like, mental health and, sexual health, drugs, like there's so many different levels, like how you fit back into society after experiencing war.
Yeah. And I mean, not all of that makes for like, I guess like Hollywood kind of excitement in the same way that I guess Menace to Society has. And it's just something as well that's more difficult to unpick. And it's not something that's easily marketable. Yeah. But I definitely think, Dead Presidents, obviously they're talking about money. That's what Dead Presidents means, is like cash. So like the whole thing also coming back to money and Jay-Z and Nas and that terminology, that word, what that word means. Yeah. And like how important that is within the African-American community. I was like, oh, okay, even if this film hasn't done amazingly on like a, on a much wider level, I think it's a really, really important.
1,000,000%.
Really,
I
sure.
Totally, agree with you. I loved the, in the high scenes, I love all the face paint. And in particular, the sister, the young girl who like jumps out of the bins and like shoots the guys. I felt like the female characters were very underdeveloped in this, but she's a badass Black Panther, to say the least. What were your thoughts on the female characters?
I think that very often they have been underdeveloped in like, I guess, this genre. Even I remember, what is it Jada Pinkett Smith's character? She plays the character in Menace to Society.
Yes.
I remember, do you know what, they're always like ride or die, like and that phrase ride or die, Bonnie and Clyde, right? That is even like, Beyonce and Jay-Z doing that video way back when, and it's the children.
So detrimental.
Well, but it's of the moment. It was like, that was how women used to talk. Yeah, can you imagine Cater to You, Destiny's Child? Like, can you imagine? That wasn't even in the 90s. That wasn't
like
that long ago. Like, so that song Cater to You, it's like, wow, would Beyonce be able to sing that now? I don't think she would. Like, like the way, and the whole like, girls that are there to ride or die, and those characters, say for example in Love and Basketball, or even in this film, they're like underdeveloped. But it's like they're always there to prop the guys up, and that is 100% something that I feel like we absorbed that a little bit. So we had like some strong female character. You watch Jada Pinkett Smith now, and you're like, okay, cool. It's like
she's proven herself.
Yeah, but I remember reading Elaine Weltroff's book. So obviously she was the editor, like the second Black editor ever at like Condé Nast. So she was the editor of Teen Vogue, and she did so many amazing things while she was the editor of Teen Vogue, like really switching it up and like speaking to a young female audience, like trying to have these empowering messages and stuff. And I remember reading her book, and she spoke about like previous relationships with guys that she'd had and how she'd be influenced by that kind of era and that kind of, I guess, the culture being like ride or die. And she, I'm down to ride, but why do I have to die? She was like, wait, that bit, like I'm down for the journey, but like I don't, and that's kind of what happens in this film. Like,
out of all of them, dead, right? She's the one who dies. Yeah,
do you know
exactly.
What I mean? Exactly. And so the other one, who was like the hot girl, who was like, you ended up being like, oh, she's bad. In the stereotype, like the Madonna Hall complex, right?
Yes,
so it's like,
exactly.
Okay, she's the one. The guys are like, I don't like her. I've watched it with several guys. The guys were like, I don't like her. I don't trust her. And then they see what she can do while she's away, and they're like, yeah, I told you about this one. The other one was always better, and it's like, the other one was like the pure one, the ride or die.
Exactly.
And then she dies. And you're like, oh my gosh, is that all the... So I do hear what you're saying, but it was the era. Do you know what I mean? It was just like...
And even the girl, I don't like the way she was like... It was a very stereotypical, like, feisty black girl, and you need to go get a job. And it was all very much like naggy. And it's like, I just didn't really like what she represented and how she was portrayed. I just wish they'd kind of given a crap a little bit more about actually how you were supposed to kind of take care of someone when they've just come back from war, kind of understanding and what they need. And the fact that he was actually trying to be a stand-up guy, do you know what I mean?
100%. I feel like I watched it and I got annoyed with her as well, but I also really felt that she was like a certain kind of character that did reappear in a lot of films, music videos, like just like TV shows. Like there was always a girl like that, I feel like, around like Will Smith's characters, and like so there was that girl being like, you ain't shit, like do you know what I mean?
Then everyone thinks that as a black girl that you're that girl. Like I remember, like, if you weren't a feisty black girl, it was like you're not black. It was just, that was kind of... And so I just think people need to be careful when they are portraying certain characters, especially black women on telly. Because
who have you seen more recently? Like, okay, it's going to be such a cop-out if you say Michaela Cole. But
she's about to flip it. She's about to flip it. Oh,
I was going to say...
She's really told you can't tell me not to say Michaela.
I was going to say, because I'm like, she's the obvious one that comes to mind. But can you think of... I mean, you could say her, but I was wondering if there were any other ones that were maybe less obvious that come to mind.
Issa Rae and Michaela Cole are like my gods right now, because I feel like what they've done individually and, you know, kind of at the same time as well. I've waited my whole life to see a character like Issa Rae's on telly. And
what is it about her character that you were waiting to see?
Someone who I could finally... to me, she was just normal. She was the normal black women that I'm used to being around. Like, just normal. Like, there was no... They're funny, they're crazy, awkward, you know, smart, silly, make mistakes. Like, she kind of fits all of that stuff in there, because I feel like growing up, it was either like you had Aunt Viv, who was like a strong black woman, you know, that kind of, or you're a hot mess. It was like, those are your two options. You don't really have, you can't be silly and awkward and goofy, and Michaela and Issa have kind of done that. They've allowed... And I'm like, yeah, I fit in that category. I'm not really, I don't really do the other two too well. So yeah, and I love that.
It feels like there is a new genre, not so much maybe in cinema, but like in like more TV, where the female characters are getting that kind of development and attention. Like, I think I did an interview recently with Rami Youssef, who does the TV show Rami, and so like he plays like an Egyptian American Muslim in America, and it was like, oh wow, this character he's not being, you know, defined by the stereotype of like the Muslim living in the racist country and it's like Islamophobic. He's like, and he's not also like struggling with his family and his identity. It's like he's struggling with himself and he needs to be
just humanity.
Exactly. And that's what Issa Rae is doing with Insecure, 100%. And Michaela Cole, and these characters are flawed. And you look at them and you're like, I'm so angry with you. Why are you doing this? Like,
I remember I was so cross with her. I was like, why would you do that? But it's, yes, you're human. You will make mistakes and you will learn from them. And
my favorite thing in Insecure is that one scene where she's getting like, so I can't remember his name, but he's going down on her. And she is like, you could just see her face, and he's got his head between her legs. And I like, you know what? I just thought it was amazing. So I was like, I can't remember too many films where I've seen a guy go down on a girl. I've seen a lot of blowjobs. So I was like, oh my gosh.
It was honestly, watching that, it was groundbreaking. It was just like, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah. It's quite graphic, and it's one of those I can't watch with my mum or anything like that. But it's kind of my sister's kind of show, and my brothers as well, got them watching it.
100%. I mean, Dead Presidents has like that, like maybe one sex scene in it, and then there's a few like prostitutes in Vietnam, and there's like, I'm like, okay, cool. But then that was also at the time as well. Like, there was no good sex. No one was having good like, when you would hear them thinking that it was good sex, you'd be like, this is not, like, you know, any boys watching these films, that is not good sex. Like,
you're like, no. Don't copy that.
Awful. So much talk, too much of that, and not enough.
Get to the point. Yeah, thank you. Oh God, that is going back to Dead Presidents. That cameo at the end with Martin Sheen linking in the Vietnam War, because obviously he was in Apocalypse Now. Do you think that was intentional? I mean, I was quite surprised because he's a big name. He's pretty huge.
I mean, I'm not too sure. Like, I haven't really looked into that massively. Like, I know I've seen that like referenced online, but it's not something that I haven't even watched Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There's a few classics that I haven't watched that I just can never admit to anyone. It's a good Vietnam War film as well.
I should check it out.
Classic. And they haven't really done too many movies together. Since then, they've kind of gone separate, apparently, word on the street.
The brothers?
Yeah, the Huey brothers.
Yeah, like one of them lives like in the Czech Republic or something. And then the other one worked on the Defiant Ones with Dr. Dre.
Yeah, which was so good.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Such a shame, though. Like, you know, they make great movies together.
Yeah, but isn't that the thing with brothers? It's like Liam and Noel Gallagher. Do you know what I mean?
True.
Like,
it's almost like you're too close to home and you can really get at each other. I mean,
imagine though, like, as siblings, like, I love my sisters, but I couldn't work with them. Are you mad? Like,
it's hard.
No, like, it was just too much. And they've made amazing things. And I think you probably just get to the point where, like, you just need to go off and do your own thing. I mean, twins as well. That's intense.
That's a lot. Yeah, you probably just need your individuality at some point, and you're like, I need to go live my life now.
Definitely. And you just get older, I guess. They were like 20 when they got so like sign off for Menace to Society. They were also babies. They were only little. So 20 years old, can you imagine? Didn't they get like $100,000 to make that film or something?
Yeah.
Like,
insane.
Like 1993 or something. You're like, that is a lot of money for two 20-year-olds to be given to make a film about gangsters in LA.
Exactly. Saying that, why I was mentioning Martin Sheen, because that scene at the end when Larenz is being sentenced, Anthony, and he throws the chair, and honestly, I felt like at one moment it was gonna like kill Martin Sheen, and that seemed improvised, but that's one of my favorite scenes. If you had to direct someone to YouTube to watch a clip to entice them to watch Dead Presidents if they haven't already, what clip would it be?
Oh, what clip would it be? Do you know what? It would be the clip when Larenz Tate's character has come home from work and he has just lost his job and he's bringing back some food for the family, and the guy who's been seeing his baby mother is coming out of the apartment, and there's just this like struggle between the two of them, and it's just, like, you can see the like humiliation and hurt in his eyes, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is honestly like, it's just really powerful. I felt like it was really, really powerful. And that was one of the films that was one of the moments in the film that really stuck with me. Yeah,
that was tough, because it really it felt he was emasculated in that moment.
Do you know what? One thing I would say is that even though the female characters weren't massively developed, it was really interesting to see a black male character being cheated on by his partner, being basically not respected by his partner, because so often in films, like, what we do see is that the woman is actually, just like being cheated on, being like treated in a certain way. So even though I fully accept and understand that they are undeveloped, I think that the female characters actually in a way are kind of strong. Like, she's not going, oh, I'm just like a, beaten woman by my husband. She's like,
true.
Nah, you are not getting the money and I'm going to go do my thing. Do you know what I mean? It is. It's interesting, because when two black men, I don't think, I did in one of the episodes, the masculinity series, I went to a Nigerian barbershop and was talking to the guys there, and the guy who owns Slider Cuts was saying to me that men in the barbershop never talk about getting cheated on. They never talk about that. And actually,
that doesn't happen. What are you talking about?
Exactly. It's just like, I'm the only one that has a second family back home. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a man. But it's like, actually, that's quite, when you think about it, it's kind of groundbreaking that they went and did that, you know.
And the fact that he was still willing to stick around or kind of fight and stay there. Another scene that I like is when he beats up Terrence Howard, when Anthony beats up Terrence Howard's character, because his character was so annoying in this, but he played it well because I guess, you know, that was his job. Because he kind of stood up to himself and you saw that. But I really enjoyed that scene because it showed the transition of the character as well.
Terrence Howard, oh my gosh, like that guy is always playing a troublemaker.
I just want to see him play a pastor one day, like just a nice guy.
Do you think he could? I don't think he's got the eyes for it. I'm not sure. Like, he's got a look on him that you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think his face just looks mean or like sinister. So it would never come off very sincere. But
he also looked very good in this film.
Oh, I was like,
hello, yeah.
Okay, Terrence, I see you. You have been brilliant. I have loved our chat so much. Thank you so much for joining me on Black Ink Podcast. Once our screenings are up and running, I would love for you to come and join us.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. I will send you an invite. But I just want to wish you all the best of luck. And is there anything else you're currently working on that we should look out for?
I do a YouTube series at the moment called A New Normal, which is kind of like muddling through what the future's going to look like after this really weird time that we're going through. It's all a bit mad at the moment.
Just a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, there are a few other projects that are up and coming, but I can't really say much about them right now. So
That's fine. We'll keep an eye out on your socials.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks again, Iman. Take care.
Been lovely. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.